waiting for, from what I understand. This is where you get to ask any and every question of some of our world-class panel up here to determine, just to ask us any type of question you want about managing your career. My name is Nitra Rucker, and I'm with KeyBank, and what I do is I manage a rotational development program for our corporate bank and for our corporate finance area. So I'm up here as the moderator, but I will allow the panel to introduce themselves, and what they're going to do is to give you their names, where they work, a little bit about themselves, and they're going to start off with their most memorable interview moment.
My name is Dan Fashionpar. I am a treasury manager for Eaton Corporation. Been there about 10 years. I handle the commercial paper program, the foreign exchange, bank account relationships. Prior to that, I was at another Cleveland, former Fortune 500 TRW, and I did a small stint at Sherwin-Williams. I also, on the side for fun, I teach finance at Kent State University, graduate and undergrad. And I also serve as treasurer for Midtown Cleveland, which is the CDC from Cleveland State till just about the Cleveland Clinic. Most memorable interview. One of the main things I do at Eaton is I serve as a hiring manager for the Financial Leadership Development Program and the intern program. So my main job is in finance, but since I have a specialization in finance, I work on the hiring for those programs. A couple years ago, we had an individual that came in for an interview for the FLDP program, and is an economics major and Ohio State. So he comes into my office, first question. He was a great guy, the kind of guy that you'd want to go to happy hour with, hang out with, a lot of fun. So my first question, I start off, I said, where do you want to be in a few years? And he looks at me, puts his arms like this, and he goes, well, this is corporate, right? This is where all the executives are. This is where I want to be. So that was the start. Then I started to go into some behavioral-based interview questions. And I said, give me a time when you had to publicly admit something you did wrong, or what have you. So he goes on to tell me that he's the head of his fraternity, which is kind of like an Animal House fraternity at Ohio State, and that his best friend was the treasurer for the fraternity, and they were missing money. So he looks at me and he goes, I had to get rid of him. He goes, you got to give it to somebody, right? And I'm sitting there going, okay. And he said, well, later on they found it wasn't this guy, and he had to publicly admit he was wrong and hire him on. So that was kind of like number two that was kind of odd. But then we walk out, and I had another Ohio State intern for the summer, and I wanted to introduce the two. So I introduced my intern Nick to the prospective candidate, and Nick was an accounting major. So my prospective candidate looks at Nick and he goes, have you had Ziegler yet for accounting? And my intern Nick goes, no, I heard he's really tough. And all of a sudden my candidate looks at him, and there's three other people there. He goes, yeah, that's why I dropped that program. So that was kind of like, okay, a no-no, and that was pretty much the end of that candidate. So, but that was the most memorable I can think of in recent memory.
Thank you, Mary Kay.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Kay Schneider, and I am the credit executive for PNC Bank in the Channel 1 area. And what that means is that we have a team of underwriters and commercial credit officers that are making loan decisions for businesses that need to borrow up to about $3 million. And I have been with PNC Bank going on 27 years, and I was invited to participate in this today due to an individual that I know on a board that I serve on, and I serve as a board member on the Cleveland alumni chapter of Beta Gamma Sigma, so some of you may be familiar with that. Also, I serve on the Esperanza board, and that is an organization that was formed in 1983. And what we are doing, our mission, is to improve the high school graduation rate for Hispanic youths in the Cleveland area. So my most memorable interview experience, and I've done a lot of interviews because in my experience at the bank, while I'm presently on the credit side and we have a pretty stable team right now, we've had to do a lot of hiring where when PNC acquired National City and we needed to replicate our model after theirs, we needed to hire 86 people between Cleveland and Indianapolis. So we had to put together a plan for that and do a lot of hiring. Also, in other experiences that I've had at the bank, I used to be on the sales side and I managed all of the business bankers in the Ohio and Michigan area. And so I would personally interview them as well, and a lot of that was by phone. But what I'll tell you about my most memorable experience is that it happened fairly recently because I just had not had this take place before. You know, a lot of times, you know, you'll just try to understand a little bit about the person's background, what has interested them in the current role that they are applying for. And you'll ask, you know, what led you to consider this role? What interests you about it? He actually went into a whole career life story, and it took 45 minutes to answer the question. I kind of let it go on because I thought, well, I'm kind of curious about this, and how would this play out in a real work setting? And I just ended up feeling like this doesn't work because you have to be able to have dialogue back and forth. And so if someone treats a simple question that way, how would you actually get through taking a look at a credit applicant and the business and talking to the business banker or the RM on the deal, understanding the strengths and weaknesses and getting it done in a reasonable period of time? So it just seemed like there wasn't really a good connection there between how we actually get work done and be able to move on to the next. So that's what I would share.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Karthik Mehta. I'm the Director of Research at North Coast Research and an analyst is there as well. We are a sell-side research firm that provides research to buy-side or institutional investors, and that we focus on just providing research to institutional investors. We have about 45 employees, almost all of them in Cleveland. And so when I was asked to share with you my most memorable interview story, I thought it would be nice to have a funny story for you. And I racked my brains over all the people that I've talked to over the years to see if I would have a funny story for you, and I don't. Unfortunately, most of my interviews tend to be plain vanilla. But I would think that the most memorable one I've had was an associate we ended up hiring that was an intern. And the reason I remember him the most out of everybody we've talked to was he was the most prepared person I ever met. He knew our firm. He knew the industry. He knew what he wanted to do. He knew what he wanted out of the internship. And he was very focused on making sure that he achieved his goal in the interview. And that's why it was the most memorable, because of how well prepared he was. And when I walked out of the room, I thought to myself, my gosh, we have to figure out a way to hire this person because he is going to add value. If he's taking this much time for a half-an-hour interview, I can't imagine the amount of time and effort he'll put into any assignments we give him. And so we eventually ended up hiring him, and he became a very good associate. So that was my most memorable interview story.
Hi, I'm Amy Davin. I am the Employment Services Leader for Westfield Insurance. I manage a team of recruiters and a team of folks that do employee relations. I have been in HR for 20 years, and my first job out of college was a recruiter for temporary service, and I could write a book of what that was like. But my very, funniest moment was we would have people all the time that would come in for a job and bring their family and all this, a lot of friends and different people that they bring in with them. But the best interview that I had was the person came to my desk, sat down, pulled out a McDonald's bag out of their bag with them, put it on the table, and ate lunch during our interview. And they did not go anywhere as a temporary, but that was my most fun. And it was almost 20 years ago, and that is still, hands down, my favorite interview I've ever had.
So I think what we can take from the panel, there's several stories of things you should not do. Hopefully you caught which ones those were, and then a really good example of something you should do. But with that, I'm going to open up the floor so that you all can ask us questions and get things started so that we can really address what's on your mind. I know there's questions.
Hi. My question concerns movement within and without and outside of the finance industry. And my biggest thing is I'm not sure if finance is where my passion lies, and then I kind of want to see where I can be most effective and apply my passion most. And I was wondering if I start my career, say perhaps in finance, and move out into some other industry, but want to pursue finance again, how does that look to prospective employers?
For what I do and what I hire for, you need to be specific. Because it's, well, number one, it's an expensive process for an employer to recruit. If it's our FLD, if our internship program, we're kind of okay with that. Are you junior, senior?
I'm a senior right now.
So if you're a senior, you're kind of late for the intern program. But if we had an intern and they come in their junior year and then they don't come back to us, we're okay with that because we want them to come back and say, we want to be with Eaton Corp. If it's our leadership development program and you're going to be there long-term, we would want you to know what you want to do because we don't want to spend the time and effort and money and then 6 months down the road you say, well, I don't really like this. So if it's something specific like a leadership development program, and most employers, I think, they want to know that that's where you want to be and you want to build up. Once you're in the company, maybe you can switch around then, but again, it's an expensive process for the employer.
Did you have something?
Sure. You know, I would tell you that as long as you go in the interview and don't tell them that you won't know what you want to do, I think it's fine. I think it's hard. You know, I think I changed my mind still today to figure out what I want to do. But I think the worst thing that can happen, and this has happened to us in interviews, is kids come in and they're like, well, I'm not really sure if I want to do research. I'm really not sure if I want to do sales. I'm not really sure what I want to do. It's okay if you don't know, but don't let the interviewee know. I mean, you have to come in and say, this is what I want to do, and convince the person that's interviewing you that that's what you want to do. And if you change your mind later on, that's life. But don't go in there without confidence.
Cool. Thank you very much.
I just have
I'm sorry.
I think it also depends on where you are in your career. I think that if you jump around within the first few years of your career, that does look a little bit more unstable to a hiring manager into HR. I think that there's a lot of talk about the millennial generation and how often not being sure and wanting to not stay in a company. I still believe that there is some paying of the dues that you need to do, and there's some time you need to put in at a position so that you can kind of establish yourself professionally.
I would just add one other thing too, that it's not uncommon to know exactly what it's going to be like when you're contemplating it now until you do it. Mm-hmm. So depending on the organization and the size of it and the other kinds of positions they offer within it, if you were to find a training program that allows you to get experience in a variety of different areas within that organization, and then at the end of that period of time, whether it's 18 months or 24 months, either you get to express your interest in a few different areas, the organization will have a good sense based on how they've seen you develop in those various rotations, where they would want to place you. That might be something that would be appealing to you and beneficial for the organization, and because it is a big expense, you know, as Dan had mentioned about bringing someone into those programs. But if there's some flexibility, if the organization has a number of different paths you can pursue, that could work out pretty well. I mean, I'll tell you, I changed my major like 5 or 6 times. Still figured out how I was going to graduate on time because I didn't get too far into any particular area, and one was chemistry and one was economics. So, and English was in there too. So I changed a lot, but I ended up getting into a training program, and that tended to work out pretty well because in my past, I've worked in retail, I've worked in commercial lending, I've worked in wealth management, I'm in credit, risk management. So, you know, it just depends on what the organization may have to offer, as well as how you might see that organization changing over time and whether you feel like you fit into the path that they are headed down.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Great question. Who's next? No questions from the crowd? Oh, here we go.
When you're in an interview or just trying to hire, what exactly do you look for, like make us stand out to you? I know it's probably different between all 5 of you, but I was just kind of curious if you could give us some pointers on that.
From my perspective, there's a few things. I look for time management skills are huge. Those you need to know, and you need to present yourself that way. A lot of our questions are geared towards that. You're going to have a lot of stuff to do. How do you manage it? And a lot of your stories or current events are going to be from college. So, and that's what we expect. You know, you're going to come back and say, hey, I had 3 exams this week or what have you. Learning agility, we know that you don't know everything right now. We don't expect you to, but we want to know that you're somebody that, when I say learning agile, that you can fit into that role, you can transform. And I would say not last but not least, I look big at IT skills. When I say IT, I don't mean an IT person, but if you're in finance, if you're working with a large Fortune 500, you're going to be pulling SAP data, maybe Oracle, whatever the ERP is. You need to know Excel, definitely. Access is a plus, but Excel, no matter what major you go into, you're going to be probably opening up Excel for the rest of your life. And I don't mean cut and paste. I mean, you need to know the formulas and what have you to run modeling. I think that's a huge plus.
Okay.
I would say we are also looking for you to understand how whatever experience you've had throughout your college career could transfer into the corporate world. So when we're asking behavior-based interview questions, you can take experiences that you've had and kind of translate them to the questions we're asking. The other thing I would say, if you have not done an internship, you need to do one. It is the price of admission. When we're interviewing, the students that I'm seeing now have done so much in their college careers that when you're comparing, if you've not done an internship, it could set you back a little bit.
I would say for us, what we look for is passion for our business. Come into our offices and make us understand that you understand our business and have a passion for what we do. When we've looked at candidates that have succeeded and those that have not, those that have succeeded, it hasn't been grade point average. It hasn't been anything other than, do you have a passion for doing what we do? And so that's what we look for when we hire people.
Yeah, I would just add that during the interview that I always ask questions of the candidate, but then at the end I leave time for them to ask questions, and I expect that they would have done some research on the organization and they would have a couple of things to ask about. And to me that demonstrates that that they prepared, as well as the fact that they're just interested in the organization, and that you might be able in that conversation to go back and forth a little bit, and that they've got some curiosity about the company and why it's decided, made certain decisions in the past. Those are great interviews. So.
And I know you said to all of us, so
Yes.
I'll add my 2 cents here. I do a lot of interviewing, so I love to do fun things to look for different characteristics. So I throw curveball questions, such as, tell me a time when you haven't been ethical. That's always fun, because you never know. Sometimes they tell you, oh, I stole, or, ran away from the cops, or whatever it is. So you want to always be on your toes for things, just to make you think. And really, it's not to see, hopefully you don't say I had a felony conviction, but it's really to see your thought process and to see how you handle pressure, more so than to really figure out who's made it through the process that far and is a criminal. So we like to see that you're intellectually curious, you can think on your feet, you have some teamwork skills, that's the other thing. But the other thing I think is really, really important is you're genuine. You have to be genuine, and I think that goes back to his passion comment. Because if you're going in there and you're faking your interest in that particular industry area, we typically can figure it out. And then you don't want to cheat yourself either. Who wants to go into something that they are absolutely going to hate? You don't want to do that. So I think that's another thing I would add.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Asking questions like that would really lead to some memorable interviewing experiences.
Oh, I got some stories. I'll tag on to your book.
All right.
CJ.
Hi, my name is CJ. When you're reading people's applications, what is the one thing that you find in applications that will always make you throw it away?
It's a Great
Not
question.
complete.
Sorry,
Not complete.
not a complete application?
And we have people who don't want to follow the process. There is a process. This is an HR person, but there is a process. There's a method to our madness. There's a reason we do what we do. And we continue to have people who refuse to follow the process. You will not even get to the next step if you don't follow the process. And even if you, here's my one piece of advice. Even if you have uploaded your resume, I still expect you to fill out the whole application. There you go.
Are you also talking about like what on the resume will make you throw it out if you saw a resume or?
Sure, on resume as well.
I think mistakes, spelling errors. I've had resumes where somebody will go, I pay attention to detail, and then the next sentence, there's a spelling error. So obviously, obviously you didn't pay attention to detail. So I think that's about the only thing.
Yeah, I'd just add to that. Because a lot of my students come up to me and ask me, what do I need to do, resume? Proofread, and proofread again. Have somebody else look at it. That's probably the number one thing that'll get something thrown out or problem. I actually had a student that applied. He wasn't my student, but he applied for our program, and he waited for me till 10 o'clock when class ended one night to tell me that he accidentally put the wrong company on the cover letter that he sent over. I did talk to the program manager, and he said right out, he goes, normally, that would have been in the basket. Pulled it aside, and he was actually recruited. He was a very good candidate. He was just too fast-paced on filling, the information out, so.
Okay. All right, well, thank you.
Thanks. I think, Dan, you made a great point, too. Sometimes it's not the mistake you make, it's how you recover.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely, we all make mistakes, but how do you go back and recover from that particular error? So,
Hi, Artel, Hiram College. My question is, how do you make a cold call or a cold email? Because most of the times, when you call the company and you ask to speak to an HR person, they usually just say, well, you have to have a specific contact, and then sometimes they'll even hang up on you. So what do you think, would the best way to make a cold call?
Well, you might find another way to find a contact in the company if you could go through LinkedIn and other associates, perhaps other graduates of your school that are working now at some of those companies, or perhaps alumni. There may be a variety of different ways you could find your way in to then have a conversation with someone at the company, and then hope that they would then take that and lead to an introduction for you with someone else at the company that would be in a hiring role.
I would say that if you had to make a cold call, make the call. Don't send an email. Everybody just sends emails. And it just, you have so many emails and it's so easy to delete. If somebody makes a call and leaves you a voicemail or gets you on the phone, you're more than likely going to have a conversation with them or talk to them. So, you can send an email if you want, but make that call. Use the phone. It's old technology, but it still works.
And I agree with Mary Kay. I would respond more to somebody who contacted me through someone else in LinkedIn. We get a lot of calls in HR. We get a lot of vendors. We get a lot of people trying to call in, and we don't have a lot of secret jobs. So what's open is generally out on the website, and there are legal reasons that we have to push people to the website. So I would be more likely to help somebody probably through that process if it was a networked than it was just a flat out cold call.
And I'd agree with that. And one of the ways, though, is to network. Be at events where there's going to be maybe people from that company or from that profession, and talk to them there. And then your professors are great resources. Talk to them. They're in the business community. Your business professors, and they know people. I have specific contacts at various universities where professors will funnel me the resumes, and then I talk to the program managers or hiring managers on the front end in HR.
Thank you.
excellent. What other questions do we have?
I'll ask one. I wonder if the panel would discuss how you use financial analysts in the business. I think a lot of students think that financial analysts have to work, selling securities or in the market or evaluating securities. Could you discuss, talk a little bit about that in each of your companies?
From Eaton, being in Treasury, if we have an analyst in, there's analysts throughout the business departments at Eaton. Specifically within Treasury, though, you could be working in as a financial analyst in real estate. It could be in insurance and risk management. It could be in capital markets, or it could be in cash management. So your Fortune 500s usually have a very large treasury department. So you would start off maybe as a junior analyst, you work your way up to regular analyst, senior analyst, and then however your career progression goes into a manager. Specifically, my interns and my analysts, we have them working on various banking activities, transactions, maybe not so much accounting, but maybe booking transactions for banking activities, reconciling accounts, manipulating data. I like to use my interns, if they're very good at Excel and what have you, pulling data from, like I said before, Oracle, SAP, modeling it. So that would be all under an analyst role for us.
We only have one type of financial analyst. Unfortunately, it's a market equity analyst. So all our analysts, all they do is look at equities all day. So unfortunately, we don't have any other financial analyst positions.
We have a variety as well. It depends on the business unit that you're in, whether or not you're looking at financial data for claims or for our business units. We have an actuarial department and investments group, so we do have a wide variety of roles that range in depth and breadth, and a lot of people that have been in those roles for a pretty long time. So,
And I would say at PNC that we do have financial analyst roles. There are more in Pittsburgh than there are in Cleveland, but I would also say too, a lot of times graduates in finance would come into banking with the idea that they are going to learn how to understand the finances of a company and assess the risk, as well as understand the goals of the company and what other types of banking services they might be able to utilize. So they might be paired up with a commercial RM to work on an assigned portfolio or several portfolios of companies and assist that RM in terms of further developing those relationships.
One more thing I wanted to add in thinking about this, don't limit yourself just to industrials or banks. There's finance activities at hospitals, the Cleveland Clinic, multi-billion-dollar organization, law firms, Jones Day, Rivas & Pogue in Cleveland, one of the largest law firms in the world. They all have to support those activities with finance departments. So there's places to go in those organizations also. So when you're in your job search, don't just limit it to where you think it's going to be a Fortune 500 organization, or I have to go to a bank, or I have to go to an insurance company. Expand your horizons to other organizations and institutions.
Let me ask a question really quickly, since we've been taking a few. How many of you all have jobs currently? Okay. How many of you are in the market? I guess that would be everybody else, right? Okay. So, well, I guess I just asked that to kind of get a take on our audience, but I think you've had some good questions, and I think the panel has really done a great job of answering those honestly. I think now I would ask, knowing the demographics of the group, what would be your best advice, if I had known it then, what I would be so much further or maybe in a different place now type of advice for the crowd?
For myself, it would probably be to be a lot more active in your undergrad. The networking, the having the perfect resume, there's a lot of competition out there. I can tell you what I see now, everyone almost, I'd say 90% plus, have interned. Offshore study is the big thing now. If you have the ability to take a class abroad, do it. Companies, multinational companies like to see that you're a cultured individual. And don't cheat out on your education. Make sure your point average is as best as you can do. We like to see a 3.0 or better especially for our FLDP program. So make sure that your education is a priority.
I would add that if you're not comfortable with public speaking, that you put yourself out there and gain experiences to do that, whether that might be volunteering with a particular organization and needing to do that for an event, or something else that will put you into that setting. Because I know for me personally, that's something that I struggled with for a while, and I was fortunate enough to have a boss that was able to give me some pointers on that then proved really helpful, because that is the type of thing that if someone is looking for you to be in a role where you have to be comfortable doing that and they sense that you're not, or that it might be a bit of a stretch to get you there, it might, have them thinking of other candidates instead of you, and you don't want to necessarily put up obstacles that don't need to be there. And always just have the confidence that you can do it anyways. I mean, everybody's got things that they're great at, and they've got some things that they're not that great at, but it doesn't mean that they can't work on them and develop it. So just have that confidence about it.
I would say learn to sell yourself. I think sales seems to be, everybody looks at selling as a kind of a negative thing, but every day you're selling yourself, whether it's in school or trying to get a job. So learn to sell yourself. And the other thing I would say is have courage. I would tell you that if I had to make a choice, and based on this particular gathering we have today, my choice would be to pick the students that had the courage to walk up to those mics and ask questions. Mm-hmm. That takes a lot of courage, that takes a lot of guts to do. And that would be the first thing I would look for, is who had that courage to get up and ask a question, because you're speaking in front of your peers, you're speaking to people you don't know. So, learn to sell yourself and have the courage to take a chance and, make yourself visible.
I think I would say don't be too hard on yourself. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has had a first job. Everybody's had their first career. Everybody's made mistakes. As long as you take accountability for what you do and try and do the best you can, I think that you need to give yourself a little bit of break, and nobody expects you to be perfect, but, so don't be too hard on yourself. It's a learning curve for everybody. And you're in the workforce a long time, so you beat up on yourself too much, you won't enjoy it. And you really should enjoy what you do, because you're there a long time. So.
Another question?
Hi guys, thank you very much for the nice panel. I have a question for all the panelists. What kind of questions do we have to ask? Like Mary told that after the interview, I always have some time for the guy who's getting interviewed. He gets some time to ask some questions. But what kind of questions would you like the person getting interviewed like to ask you about your company, or even the roles which you have when the guy gets hired?
I like where they ask about things that the company has been involved in, or strategic decisions that it has made, or even just things on the softer side. What is the culture like at this organization? I've talked to some employees and they've said this. I'm also curious about that, and there's some things that you